Okay, hi, and welcome to my floor. I am on the floor here by my books. I got the books stacked up here, books over here. I got books that go behind that chair to the wall, behind this chair to the door, books. Today I'm going to talk about my novel. I'm going to talk about research, creating a well-fed novel, being a well-fed writer. I love that Stephen King quote in the beginning of this video. Reading feeds me. Reading, for people who love to read, for people who are writers, it's the first real language. Yes, there's communication with your family or guardians, the people around you as a child, but the place where you really feel connection can start with books. That feeling of, oh, there's a world out there. Oh my God, there's other people that have thought things like me. For me, I heard this a few years ago, and I thought it was really interesting. I cannot cite where I heard this, but this idea that there are some people that connect spiritually through nature, and there are people who connect through, there's all different ways that we can sort of connect with the universe, but for some of us, it's this connection of ideas. When we connect one idea to another idea, and something that starts to make so much more sense. We uncover themes in the world. We start to make meaning out of different things connecting together. And oh my goodness, this idea is reflected in this line of dialogue that I saw in this movie the other day. And one person says this, and it connects with the novel or with the poetry that I was reading recently, the song lyrics. All of these ideas connecting, for me, is how I find beauty. I find connection. I almost feel like I find existence of God, universe, spirituality, whatever. So for me, having a lot of books, and maybe you connect with this, having a lot of books around me feels like there's so much, there's so many resources for connection. I feel so much possibility in a room where there are a lot of books. And for me, writing this novel had to come from a lot of books, had to come from all of the ideas that I've been connecting over these last few years. That's how it stitched itself together. People always ask writers, where do your ideas come from? And I know a lot of us writers, it's like, how do you not have ideas? How are you not sitting around saying well, this is happening in the news in this way, and this is happening in my life or in my community in this way, and these themes go together, and I saw this in this other novel, and I have something to say about this, and it all kind of, how do you not do that? This is what writers do. This is what creative people do all the time. We're always making connections. So if you find this relatable, welcome. Whether or not you're interested in writing a novel, I hope that this is interesting to you. You'll note I'm feeling very Jane Austen lately. Get closer. How close do I want to get to the camera? I'm wearing a little Jane Austen thing, necklace. My mom actually thrifted this a long time ago. I think she got this for like $5 at a thrift store and asked me the other day if I want it. I was like, hell yeah, I want that. I'm feeling very Jane Austen spring right now. I just started reading Pride and Prejudice, picked it up from the library just to see if I felt like reading that book, which I've never actually read. I read Persuasion and I read Mansfield Park because I didn't see movies of those, over and over again as a teenager, unlike Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility and Emma. And I finally just picked up Pride and Prejudice and was like, maybe this is the time. It's the time. The spring is the time to read Jane Austen. So I'm going to be reading Pride and Prejudice. I'm going to buy myself a copy because I needed to prove to myself with the library book that I really wanted to read it. I do. So I'm going to start that in May. If you're reading Pride and Prejudice right now, or if you just feel like talking about it, I'm going to share a little bit on Instagram. I don't really ever intend to lead a reading group ever again. I've done that and kind of been too ADHD and dropped off. But if you feel like having a Jane Austen spring with me, let me know. I'm going to start reading it in May. Yay. So research, books. By the way, Jane Austen is helpful to me in my research in filling out this novel, because I need some like I need the original romantic comedy writer, right? I have said on here that it's a romance. I do still feel that at its heart it is a romance novel. It might not be a romance novel in the way that many people think of it, which might make it just a contemporary fiction novel in the end. But the structure of it comes from romantic comedy. So let's just go back a little bit. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how I started getting into novel writing, because in the past I was a filmmaker. I still am a filmmaker. It's just on pause for right now, okay? But I was a filmmaker. I made a feature film called June Falling Down, which also has a romantic comedy structure to it. By the way, I have DVDs of it. I noticed that while setting up. I have DVDs of it right here. That's me, June Falling Down. Yay. We went to 15 film festivals. It's a sweet little movie. It's very DIY, very micro budget, $11,000. Yes, you can find it on Amazon. I might put it on YouTube at some point. We'll see. But I was a filmmaker, and I always thought I might write a novel someday. Kind of figured it would be like, I'll do that when I'm much older, when I'm done being all crazy, being a filmmaker and an actor and a screenwriter and all these things. And during the pandemic, I was writing a thriller screenplay, and I thought to myself, we're reading so much during those early months of the pandemic and indoors. And I was like, you know what? I want to read some thrillers. I've never really let myself just sit and read thrillers. And I had this wonderful sort of synchronicity happen where every time I went on walks in my neighborhood, I would pass those free little libraries, and like an awesome thriller would show up every single time. Like I read Gone Girl, I read the Silent Patient, Girl on the Train, just like fun thrillers, like things that I had never really let myself read before. I was like, no, I want to be like a writer. I don't want to read thrillers. Turns out Gone Girl is fucking fantastic. That's a fantastic novel if you haven't read it. But it opened me up to novels again. I had always read novels, but just like I read maybe like 10 a year when I was like really working. Sorry, notification. When I was really working on screenwriting, I would read as much as I could, but I was much more focused on film. And during the pandemic, I just let myself fall into novels, and it was sort of this slow motion awakening of like, I think I have really probably always have had a novelist personality. I tend to be very talky with my screenwriting. Like my ideal movie is like before sunset, before sunrise, before sunset. The Linklater movies. I love people talking. I love smart dialogue. I love a good long monologue. I'm a writerly filmmaker, and to sink in and sort of give myself permission to just do something that I loved, which is just to read novels, was a sort of a slow motion awakening during the pandemic, and it just sort of built from there. I kept reading. I kept writing. I started turning that thriller screenplay into a novel. I wrote a draft of that. And all this time I was continuing to try to write screenplays for money. And as some of you know, I've sold screenplays that were written specifically for money, specifically to support me as a broke filmmaker. So I wrote Christmas movies, and I wrote a very silly Lifetime thriller, and but it really was the Christmas movies where I was like, yeah, that's a pleasant world to hang out in as a day job. That's fine. So I'll write a bunch of those. And that worked for a while up to a point. And it was obviously wonderful to sell those screenplays and to receive money for my writing. What a wonderful experience. But I knew I wanted to get out of it, and I knew I wanted I knew my entire life was changing, frankly. If you've followed me at all, I moved out of LA, I moved back to Wisconsin, I've done tons of healing work, ended a relationship, everything in turmoil, started painting again, all of these things. And I knew I wanted to stop writing these screenplays for money. And it really it really bothered me to have my screenplays and all of this hard work that I was putting into these movies, even though, frankly, they started as a joke, for me being like, fuck it, I'm just going to write romantic comedy, made for TV movies and just make a bunch of money and like, be free, not have to live in LA, do whatever I want. And it became, which is great when they got made, although not so great when they got made, because as a filmmaker, it's very irritating to see things that change. Anyway, we won't get into that. But where did I want to go with this? It was also so frustrating to actually enjoy the process of writing these films also, like surprisingly, even though it started out as something I was kind of being rather flip about, to put really beautiful moments into screenplays that for the most part never saw the light of day, like went into purgatory with producers, and I still have several out there like that. And I was writing, I may have talked about this already, but I was working on this what is now this novel that I'm writing. And I started to come up with some moments in it that were very lovely and heavier than these movies usually are, which obviously normally I redirect myself away from that. But I let myself think, what if I let this series of characters be in this movie? Because there's a way that you can manipulate it into being a little bit more happy and, fit into like the Hallmark style, whatever. And I was dealing with loneliness, characters who were lonely. And I was writing out some details about them, and I just like was like, oh my God, I love them. And I kind of cried. And then I thought about like the Hallmark boppy music or the sad soapy music playing. And I just said, absolutely fucking not. Absolutely fucking not. They are not getting this. And I was like, fuck, I'm writing a novel, I guess. And yeah, I didn't know what, like, I have, like everyone, and this is probably worth putting into a whole other YouTube, the inherent sexism around people hating romance or looking down on romance novels. But I absolutely internalized a lot of that, and I saw it as stupid, as fluffy, as like, who wastes their time on that? Not having ever actually read one of those novels, by the way. And when the timelines are a little bit confusing, but I was probably about to sell a script the week of the WGA strike, the Writers Guild strike. And I ended up turning down meetings with producers for one of my scripts, and it really sucked. And I was like, well, what I thought was just about to fund me pretty well with money is now gone for an unknown amount of time. And I was about to go to my grandparents' cabin with my mom, and I picked up an Emily Henry book from the store on the way up. And I was like, I've heard of her. She's very famous. I don't really know what these books are about. And yeah, my mom was like, I'll buy you the book, whatever. Let's just like have a beach read. And I read, I have it right here. I read Book Lovers, and I was like, this is so funny. This is so sharp. This is so emotional. I did not know that romance novels were like this. So I picked up more romance novels, and I picked up Carly Fortune, who's lovely and has a really sweet vibe to her, and Main Character Energy by Jamie Varon, and a lot of other books that I don't have because I'm a library person. I love Beth O'Leary. I'm actually reading this right now, The Flat Share. I really love her. And I started to go, okay, this is the beginning of my research for my novel. Okay, there's this whole other world out there. Maybe writing could be much lighter than I've treated it in the past, because I was very serious before. Maybe if I could release some of my snobby attitude about romance, and try to open up to like what purpose this genre serves for people, how it helps people feel hopeful and delighted, and yes, sexy in some ways. Although it really depends. It's a big spectrum, the romance genre. But just hopeful, and how all of them have these lessons of empowerment that these lead characters are going through. And it sort of opened up my brain about what was possible with writing. But yeah, that's a whole other conversation for another day. Like romance, sexism against romance novels, and also frankly, like the sex scenes, like how does that work? Some of them are very different. Some of them are like I had to learn all this, like closed door romances. I had no idea. I had so much to learn. And I yeah, and then it also was like bringing that into me. All of these books that I'm going to talk about, I had to bring them through me. And this is what we do as well-fed writers, as well-fed novelists, as well-fed filmmakers. Whatever you do, I kind of had to let them percolate through me and go like, okay, who am I? Excuse me. Who am I if I'm going to write a romantic comedy? I'm sort of a heavier person. I'm a sadder person. I veer more bittersweet. That's why I actually liked Beth O'Leary's work quite a bit. And then I was also like, yeah, like, do I want to be more biting? How much so? And this is frankly something I'm still working through as a writer, as I write. Um, I'm all over the place, but this is what researching is, right? You're trying things out, you're reading things, you're saying, okay, what is this novel? It was very grounding to me to read these books and to start to figure out um, what I was doing as a novelist. I'd only written a thriller, and sort of a messy one that I didn't quite like at that. Um, so I think now is the time to tell you that I'm writing a book about a chef. My protagonist is a chef. Um, that's probably the most of what I'm going to tell you. There's a love story. It's not as prominent of a love story as I initially thought when I was doing all of my romantic comedy research. So there's that. Um, Actually, someone who helped me with this is Nora Ephron, because I was like, who combines food? This book, Heartburn, very biting, memoir-ish, but it's autobiographical novel. It is a novel, and it's based on Nora Ephron. 7 months into her pregnancy, she discovered that her husband was in love with another woman. So yeah, it's not like a sweet book, but it's biting, and it also, she's a food writer. She's a cookbook author in this book. That's her character's job. So it's combining food, it's combining romantic comedy, and it's combining sort of a biting wit, just to help me again ground myself more. Okay, as I spread out from the genre of romance and how other people have done this, how did Nora Ephron do it? The genius romantic comedy writer who's also highly intelligent, did not dumb down her movies at all, but still managed to be sentimental, sweet, smart, complicated, but also heartwarming and feel good. Speaking of Nora Ephron, Julia Child, have you ever seen Julie and Julia? My Life in France. Talking about the pleasure of food. People who live big because of food. I got into writing a novel about a chef because I was obsessed with the show, which is now on HBO Max, but it was a Magnolia Network show. And it's called The Lost Kitchen. And it's about this woman, Erin French, who is she calls herself a cook, but she's a chef. She's fantastic. And she has a restaurant called The Lost Kitchen in her small hometown in Maine. And that show is so good. It is so much better than it should be. I mean, it's amazing. And it's about her working with local farmers and getting her ingredients and adapting to change as a restaurant owner. And I just loved it so much. And it reminded me of being a filmmaker and of being a leader and of working with a team. So when I originally started this as a screenplay, this chef screenplay, romantic comedy, I was like, oh, I can tell that story of a leader of a team, like a ragtag team, because that's what I did as a filmmaker. And it was so personal to me and so meaningful to me and so moving, and the ways that being a leader demands so much more of you, and it demands you to like dig down into yourself and lead people. So of course, then that meant that I was like, okay, I got to read about food. I got to read about being a chef. I read, Anthony Bourdain, which is not here right now because it's a library book. I read Aaron French's memoir, which I think is called Finding Freedom. I read Sous Chef. Look at this. There's a lot of research in this book because this is really technical, really technical. I've been reading food writing. So I love this cookbook. It's very, very scientific, salt, fat, acid, heat. I've been reading The Art of Eating, which is huge because it's a bunch of books. It's like 5 books in it. I'm reading The Gastronomical Me right now. MFK Fisher, legendary food writer. Who else? Oh, Ruth. I love Ruth Reichel. I have like 5 of her books right now. I don't know why this is the only one that I have in this room with me at the moment, but this might be my favorite of her books, even though the covers, it's okay. Comfort Me with Apples. The title doesn't even make sense, but for what it's about. But she was the editor-in-chief of Gourmet magazine, which I grew up with. I loved it so much. My parents had stacks of it in our house, and she's talking in this about. It's actually very personal. It's about her first marriage in Berkeley, becoming a food writer, and then she very freely like writes about like affairs, and her husband was having affairs too. It was very like in the 70s, and going to Paris in the 80s and eating there, and just the way that she writes about, and then it talks about her falling in love with her second husband, and it is so lovely and such an unexpected part of the research for this book, because I just picked her books up so randomly. And something I heard her say in an interview was one of the things that she loves about food is that it opens you up to life. Opening yourself up to food opens you up to life. And you can start to see all of these themes starting to come into my novel. And falling in love, being a leader, opening up to life, the sensuality of food, the creativity of food. So it's like, it's funny. It's like, I'm like telling you about my book without telling you everything about it. I also have, my book has 3 sisters in it. So I was reading books about sisters, Blue Sisters, great book. Also, what's it called? Oh, I can't remember the name right now, but it's by Anne Napolitano. I can't remember her name. It's about sisters, and it's sort of based on Hello Beautiful. Hello Beautiful. It's based on it sort of jumps off from Little Women. You can see Empire Falls. I just started this. It's about a small town diner. You can see how, as I write, I'm building this structure of research, and some of it's just joyful research, where I can be grounded in the genre. I can be grounded in other authors who have jumped off of the genre. I can be grounded in stories about sisters. and also about a diner. There's a diner in my book too. I just revealed that too. And people who work in very fancy kitchens. And it gives me grounding, but it also gives me something to bounce off of, to say, oh, I like that, but I actually don't. I wouldn't do the way that they did it in that book. So it's just very much so the way that this whole YouTube right now is being constructed. Freewheeling. This is how I am working with this novel while I write, picking up these books, letting myself be so filled up with them that it pours out in different places while I'm writing. Another book is, I actually have only read a little bit of this. I'm just getting started. The Bookshop by Penelope Fitzgerald. It's about a woman who opens a bookshop in a small town, and I think all we really need to know here is the last sentence in the description, which is, a town that lacks a bookshop isn't always a town that wants one. So this is the mess of the books that I am using for research right now, and I am filling my brain with them. And whenever I am stuck writing, I know I need to read. Whenever I am not thinking clearly as a human, even, I know I need to read. Reading, for those of us who really love it, is sustaining. It is nourishing. It helps the world make sense. For writers, making those connecting dots happen in our brains, it makes it feel like there is a reason. There's something that we can do in a world that has gone insane. I am writing this book while our current American president is in office, and and that is absolutely showing up in this book. It has to. Gosh, of course I just like want to tell you all about the book, but it's very important to me also that I keep quite a lot of it close to the chest, because I do think that there's something that happens where you create alchemy inside of you by like holding secrets while you're creating something. But I did want to share some of what I'm looking at, some of what is informing me and helping me. And last thing I'll say is that this is true of all art, is that as you grow, your art grows. As you open up to life, as Ruth Reichel talked about with food, as you open up to food, as you open up to life, your art opens and expands too. So very much so, I feel like this novel is an outward expression of who I've become and who I'm becoming, and my own demons, of course, but also just what I see in the world and what I want to see in the world. This is the book I've needed. This is the book I've needed, and no one wrote it quite the way that I can and quite the way that I need it written. I also needed to see a book where two characters fall in love, two characters who are really committed to growing and to supporting themselves and into being a force for good in the world, and who are imperfect, but who find each other as imperfect beings. And all the characters in this novel are very imperfect, and yet they still find each other and they find hope. And I really need that. I really need that. I think a lot of people really need that. So my research is supporting me in writing this book, and I'm very excited. I am regularly very nervous and daunted, and I'm like, why am I telling people on YouTube about this? But I don't know. Life is short. It's really helpful to share about things, and it's helpful for writers to talk about it, because We spend all day in our heads with our books and with our books and with the books of others that we read. So this was a long video. Thank you so much for watching. I'd like to do more videos and yeah, talk about writing, talk about the process. If you are researching anything right now, let me know. I'm very, very, I love hearing what people are reading. I love it. I love hearing how people are researching. Yeah, let me know. Okay. Thanks. Bye.